Hi everyone, here's the Bookchemist once again, and today I wanted to give you a brief overview of my favorite H.G. Wells novels. H.G. Wells is one of my favorite writers of all times, very much. He is definitely among my favorite science fiction writers, among my favorite British writers, and he is one of those guys I was obsessed with when I started to get more heavily into literature, when I was, in my second year as an undergraduate. What I'm holding here is the newly published selected works of H.G. Wells by Wordsworth Classics, which features about nine, I think, of H.G. Wells' most famous works. I'll talk about it a little bit at the end of the video. First though, let's talk about the actual novels. Don't expect too many surprises. I'm kinda mainstream. My tastes in general tend to be kinda mainstream. And do let me know about your favorite H.G. Wells novels. I'm far from having read all of his works. The guy published a shitload of stuff, and I still have so many novels to check out, and so many of his stories. I think I just read maybe one or, two or three of his stories, of his short stories. Do let me know what you think. Is his short fiction as good as his long fiction? Let's discuss that shit in the comments. About that top 5. At number 5 I would probably put The World Set Free, which these days is mostly known, it's not among the most widely read of Wells' works, but it is mostly known because in it he kinda foresees the coming of the atomic bomb. The atomic bomb Wells foresaw has not much to do with the atomic bomb we sadly have today, but still it's a weapon of incomparable power, of incomparable destructive power, and he mixes his reflections on what would happen with the development of such a weapon with reflections on, the inevitability in early 20th century of a global conflict. And this is one of his works where it's an apocalyptic novel in many ways, and feels still to this day has all the thrills and all the, macabre excitement of those great apocalyptic flicks. The Day After Tomorrow, all those flicks where New York usually gets hit by a tsunami or something, you get all of that set in Europe in The World Set Free, which is also among his most utopian novels, let's say. H.G. Wells was in many ways a political writer, and he developed his political views in many of his novels, like in When the Sleeper Wakes. That's a heavily political novel about society in the future, about what will probably go wrong with society, what could improve with it, about so many different topics. In that sense, The World Set Free is probably in some ways a little bit too optimistic. Especially if you have a knowledge, as you probably have if you haven't traveled here from the past. If you have a knowledge of 20th century history, The World Set Free will appear a little bit too optimistic to you, but Wells still foresaw so many of the institutions we have today, and again, the action and the thrills are very good, and it's kinda creepy but very exciting to read about atomic bombs before they were invented. If you like that shit, do check out Zeno's Conscience by Italian La Coscienza di Zeno, which has absolutely nothing to do with atomic bombs, but features the best closing paragraph in the history of literature, which has something to do with that whole idea of, foreseeing the future, and has nothing to do with Wells, but it's another awesome novel. Moving on to number 4, I would probably put The Invisible Man, another amazing novel. This one much less than many others, less about society, less about politics. To me, what shines in The Invisible Man is the sheer horror of it. The whole idea of how much power corrupts people, how people can get fucking evil very easily in the right circumstances, and overall it has, again, that beautiful feel of a horror story, even of a serial killer movie in some ways, about the hunt for this character. It escalated much more quickly and much more violently than I expected. H.G. Wells in so many ways feels like a very strong novelist even to these days. The stuff he talks about is serious, disturbing shit very often, even though he was writing in late 19th century, early 20th century, and still gives me the creeps, but it's an amazing novel. Number 3 would be The Time Machine, another novel that gives me the creeps in some of its passages, another reflection about the future and about the many ways in which society can go awry, and in some ways a contemplation of, the fleetingness of human life on Earth. What makes The Time Machine, with all of its clever reflections, with all of its inventive passages, what makes it a great novel in my opinion, is that it is filled with art, much more than, you know, other utopian political novels by Wells, such as, again, When the Sleeper Wakes, which is not really among my favorite works by Wells. There, it's kinda difficult to relate to the characters, it's kinda difficult to get involved in the life of the main character, it all feels a little bit too much like a political discussion. Time Machine, not at all. It's very much a novel, it's very much about the emotion of a guy confronted with unspeakable, unimaginable occurrences, and that last paragraph, you know, about the survival of human kindness and stuff, always puts tears in my eyes. Number 2, enough with kindness, enough with pity. It's The War of the Worlds, a fucking merciless novel, and pretty terrifying too. That's probably even more disturbing, I think, than The Invisible Man. And again, when I read it, I did not expect at all such a novel from such an historical period to be so vividly horrifying. It's truly a terrifying novel to this day. It conveys that same feeling of apocalyptic horror as the great masterpieces of the genre, as, I don't know, I Am Legend by Mason, another masterpiece, nothing to do with the movie, read it, it's amazing. It conveys that same feeling of how easily the human mind and, you know, your integrity can collapse in extreme circumstances. In that sense, the part where the aliens destroy the Earth is of course amazing, and it's the reason why you read the book, but probably the strongest passages, and in some ways the best in the book, are those where the survivors discuss and try to cooperate, and things go awry once again, and you get a glimpse of the horror and the darkness at the heart of humanity. And it's, again, it's a fucking masterpiece. Wells is truly among my favorite writers. Talking about the horror of humanity, what novel portrays it better but The Island of Dr. Moreau? I love, again, I really love all of Wells' works. This is kind of a messed up video, but that's because I'm a big fan and I'm just going, wee, amazing. But The Island of Dr. Moreau is the one I'm kind of obsessed with. It's, in my opinion, kind of a perfect novel. The novel is fast and quick, and everything that can go wrong goes wrong, but you still, you know, get surprised by a few of the twists, and constantly its theme, this idea that, you know, humanity isn't as distant from animals and from wild beasts as we would like to think, is developed beautifully within the book. That whole idea that, you know, Wells was able, at his best, to discuss all sorts of philosophical or political ideas inside a good story is embodied beautifully in The Island of Dr. Moreau, and all of the time you get these moments when the character, as in, you know, the very first pages, when the animal side of the character emerges, and it's just beautiful. And its last few pages, its conclusion, its whole reflection on this topic, on the, you know, the horror of the bestial side of humanity, and talking about, you know, the arts and sciences as the only beacons of hope in such a terrible reality. That's cosmic horror, basically. That's H.P. Lovecraft before H.P. Lovecraft even started writing adult fiction. Wells is such an amazing writer. If you think about it, each of these works, you know, you can find elements of them, and you can find some of the reflections which were ignited inside of them in so much of contemporary fiction, be it apocalyptic fiction, be it war movies, be it political or utopian or dystopian fiction, be it horror fiction, of course, science fiction. He was such a great writer, really among my favorite. What about this edition? This was a review copy I received. I was expecting the hardcover edition of these selected works. I'm not complaining, I'm just pointing that out because, you know, the hardcover exists, and you may want to check it out, because if you're getting a selected works of H.G. Wells, I'm guessing you already know him and would like to get a fancy edition of his stuff, and the hardcover may be even prettier than this one. So, you know that it exists. I'm also mentioning this because it may be possible that the hardcover edition, which I wasn't able to check, doesn't have the same flows as this one. I'm mostly referring to the fact that, you know, this is a collected works, it's a selected works by a big publishing house, by Wordsworth Classics. I was expecting at least a small preface, at least 2 critical pages at the beginning of the novel, talking a little bit about these works, how they connect their importance in literary history, anything of the sort. There's nothing of that in these selected works, and even worse, there's a kind of big mistake. They misprinted the last part of the Time Machine, which, as I mentioned, is among the best things Wells ever wrote. They put it at the end of When the Sleeper Wakes. So if you have this edition, do know about that. Do know that the Time Machine doesn't end where this edition ends it, and you have to go at the end of When the Sleeper Wakes to get that epilogue. That was my impression of it, and those were my favorite works by H.G. Wells. Thanks all the same to the good people at Wordsworth for the review copy, and thanks to you for watching the video. Let me know about your favorite Wells novels in the comments, and thanks for watching an entire video of me going, Wells was really an amazing writer, Wells was really amazing. Thank you very much, bye guys.